What if a prisoner started showing signs of pregnancy without ever coming into contact with another human being? That's exactly what happened inside a remote women's prison deep in the mountains of Virginia. It started with a swollen belly. Then came the surveillance footage, something pushing from the inside of her abdomen. And one night, she vanished without a trace. But that was only the beginning. The lights flickered. The cameras went black at exactly 2:44 a.m., and guards began hearing children's laughter in empty hallways. Some say she opened a door. Others believe she was the door. Whatever the truth is, one thing is certain. This story will chill you to your core. Watch until the end, because what you're about to hear isn't just a horror story. It might already be happening near you. Let's begin. At the edge of the Appalachian Mountains in Virginia, far from any bustling city, stood a remote federal women's correctional facility named Ridgewood Penitentiary. Hidden among the pines and mist, it had become a forgotten relic of the justice system, quiet, cold, and unsettlingly isolated. Locals referred to it in hushed tones as the Hollow House. Among the inmates was a woman named Melissa Carter, 33 years old. She had been transferred from another institution 6 months prior under vague circumstances no one ever really questioned. Melissa was unlike the others, not because of her crime, but because of her silence. She didn't speak. She didn't receive visitors. She didn't react, not even to the passing threats or cruel whispers of the more aggressive inmates. Most of the guards didn't even remember her name. It was as though she simply existed, without truly being there. That illusion of stillness shattered one rainy morning in October. Nurse Rachel Vaughn was making her routine rounds for the quarterly health inspections when she entered Melissa's cell. She paused mid-step. Melissa was sitting on the edge of her bunk, her arms folded over a visibly swollen abdomen. Rachel's heart skipped. That can't be right. "Melissa," she asked cautiously, stepping closer, "are you pregnant?" There was no answer, no eye contact, just that same blank stare at the far wall. Rachel's hands trembled as she took Melissa's pulse and pressed gently against her stomach. It was round, tight, convincingly pregnant. But that couldn't be. Melissa had been in solitary confinement for months. The camera records, as later confirmed, showed zero interaction with any staff or inmate. She stepped out of the cell, called for a supervisor, and within the hour, Melissa's case was reported to the prison medical director, Dr. Howard Green. "She can't be pregnant," Officer Lance Hill muttered, reviewing security footage. "There's been no contact, no breach, no physical signs of assault. This is impossible." But the proof lay in plain sight. Her belly was growing. Dr. Green ordered a full set of tests: blood work, urine analysis, and an ultrasound. The next day, 5 people entered the medical ward's ultrasound room: Dr. Green, Nurse Rachel, Officer Hill, and 2 other staff members. Melissa lay on the examination table, silent and expressionless as ever. When the machine was powered on and the wand slid across her abdomen, the room fell into eerie silence. There was something moving inside her, but it wasn't a fetus. The shape was amorphous, shifting, like a misty pulse in a liquid. It had no skeletal structure, no heartbeat, and no measurable anatomy. A flicker, a movement, and then it vanished. Dr. Green frowned, removing his glasses. There's no embryo, no fetus, but there is a foreign mass of unknown origin. Alive. Melissa's eyes finally moved. Slowly, She turned her head toward Rachel and whispered, her voice a faint breath, "Don't look at it. It doesn't want to be seen." A chill swept the room. No one could speak. That night, the prison's surveillance operator, Caleb Morris, was reviewing footage from Melissa's cell when he noticed something disturbing. Around 2:03 a.m., the lights in cell B16, the one assigned to Melissa, began to flicker. Then, on camera, Melissa sat upright on her bed. Her stomach moved again, but this time, visibly so, even on the grainy footage. It pulsated, not like a pregnant belly, but as if something was trying to press its way out. Caleb leaned forward. He hit pause. Rewind. Frame by frame. In one frame, barely a blink, there appeared a thin, dark outline of what looked like a hand. A hand from the inside of Melissa's abdomen, long, bone-thin fingers, pressing outward against her skin. Then gone. Caleb reeled back from his desk, skin crawling. He called the night supervisor immediately. The footage was sent for review. Word began spreading quietly through the facility. By morning, Melissa was moved to a special observation room. No protest. She walked calmly, as if she had been expecting it. As Dr. Green prepped for further testing, Melissa spoke again, this time a little louder, a little colder. "It's not mine," she said, staring straight ahead. "It's passing through." "What's passing through?" Rachel asked, almost whispering. Melissa didn't answer. She closed her eyes and smiled. That same day, one of the nurses who had examined Melissa collapsed in the hallway. When she woke up, she screamed uncontrollably and had to be sedated. She spoke of a shadow standing behind the mirror and children with no faces. Things were no longer just strange. They were wrong. Deeply, spiritually wrong. And this was only the beginning. Within 48 hours of Melissa Carter's transfer to the observation unit, Ridgewood Penitentiary began to unravel. The hallway lights dimmed intermittently at night. Surveillance feeds from the West Wing, including the camera in Melissa's new room, started going completely black between 2 a.m. and 2:45 a.m., despite no reported technical errors. And worse, strange audio began bleeding into the footage. Low whispers, faint children's laughter, the sound of something dragging across concrete floors. Dr. Howard Green, now visibly shaken by the lack of medical explanation, invited an outside neurologist to consult. But by then, the case had moved beyond science. On the fourth night in the observation ward, Officer Lance Hill took up post outside Melissa's room. Around 2:10 a.m., he heard what he would later describe as a child crying underwater. When he peered through the observation window, he saw Melissa sitting upright in bed, her hands pressed against her stomach. Then he saw it. A face, pressed outward from inside her abdomen. No eyes, no nose, just a wide, smiling mouth, stretching the skin grotesquely before slipping back beneath the surface. Hill staggered back, fumbling for his radio, but when backup arrived, the room was quiet. Melissa lay asleep, her stomach completely still. "She's just playing with you," she muttered without opening her eyes. The next day, Melissa underwent another round of tests. Still, there was no sign of a fetus. Her blood work remained normal. The only anomaly was elevated brain activity during sleep, far beyond any dream state ever recorded. It was as if her mind was functioning on another frequency entirely. Meanwhile, in the facility's archives, clinical psychologist Dr. Evelyn Chambers began looking into Melissa's past. What she found was puzzling. Melissa Carter's birth certificate existed, but all public records, school enrollment, medical history, even her social security trail, vanished after age 5. The court documents that led to her incarceration simply read, "Charged with causing mass panic and instability through violent behavior." No victims listed, no witnesses, no location details, just a line. "Subject detained for the protection of the public." Dr. Chambers dug deeper. She traced Melissa's last known address to a town in Kentucky called Elders Grove. Elders Grove had been removed from federal maps over a decade ago, cited as uninhabitable due to flooding and sinkhole risk. But older reports painted a stranger picture. There had been a mass disappearance. The entire town vanished overnight, all residents gone. Only one person was ever found, a 5-year-old girl, unconscious, lying at the steps of a local church. That girl was Melissa. At that moment, Dr. Chambers realized they weren't dealing with a medical anomaly. They were dealing with something ancient. Back at Ridgewood, things escalated quickly. One of the guards, Tom Shepard, went missing during his midnight shift. Security footage showed him standing outside the observation ward at exactly 2:15 a.m., staring blankly at the door. He raised his hand as if greeting someone, yet the hall was empty. Then he opened the door and walked inside. He never walked out. His flashlight and belt were found the next morning on the floor in the middle of Melissa's room. Melissa herself hadn't moved an inch. She sat on the bed, hands in her lap, eyes wide open, smiling. That morning, Dr. Green made a decision. Melissa needed to be transferred to a psychiatric hospital under federal jurisdiction. The paperwork was prepared. But Melissa had one last thing to say. As she was being wheeled down the corridor, she whispered to Rachel, "It was never about me. This place, it called to something. I was just the door." That night, Ridgewood's electrical systems failed entirely. All video footage from that evening was lost, except one clip recovered from the IT server. In the 37-second video, the camera inside the observation room flickered to life. Melissa was sitting up, humming something softly. Then, from the shadows of the corner wall, a figure emerged. It was humanoid, but without a face. Its head tilted sideways, unnaturally. It approached Melissa slowly and merged into her body as if walking into water. The screen cut to black. And at 3:03 a.m., every door in the facility, every cell, every exit, every secure gate, unlocked simultaneously. The prison went into immediate lockdown, but it was too late. Melissa's room was empty, her bed untouched. Only one thing was found. A message carved into the wall, deep and jagged, written in blood. "I'll be back." In the days following Melissa Carter's inexplicable disappearance, Ridgewood Penitentiary was placed under federal lockdown. No press coverage, no external investigations. Only a classified memo circulated within government channels. "Subject has breached containment. Unknown entity remains at large." But the horror didn't stay locked within those walls. 3 days later, former guard Nathan Reese, who had resigned just a month earlier, was found dead in his apartment in Roanoke. The official report cited suicide, but the details were haunting. He had slit his wrists, yes, but the words, "She opened it," were scratched into the wooden floor beneath him, repeated dozens of times in shaky handwriting. His mirror bore foggy fingerprints, and the final security camera footage from his hallway showed a girl in white walking past his door at exactly 2:44 a.m. Her face, when zoomed in, matched Melissa Carter. Meanwhile, Dr. Evelyn Chambers, now convinced that Melissa was a vessel, not a victim, revisited records from Elders Grove. In a sealed folder retrieved from a former state archivist, she found a disturbing revelation. Over a century ago, Elders Grove had been the site of a forgotten ritual known as the Cradle Watch. Every generation, one girl, typically age 5, was chosen to act as a cradle to house something the villagers only referred to as the Hollow. The Hollow was not a ghost, nor a demon. It was a formless entity, ancient and insatiable. It could not enter the world on its own, only pass through a living vessel, and once awakened, it would leave behind an echo that infected those who saw it, like a psychic virus. On the final page of the document was a line written in faded ink. She smiles as the door opens. Back at Ridgewood, the walls were beginning to talk, literally. Inmates reported hearing Melissa's voice in the plumbing, through the vents behind mirrors. Some claimed she whispered their deepest secrets, things no one else could possibly know. And then came the incidents. A woman in cell A09 woke up with bloody handprints on her chest. Another claimed she saw a child crawling on the ceiling. Multiple security guards resigned within 48 hours. One was found huddled in the break room muttering, "She has no eyes. She's smiling. Dr. Green, now battling chronic insomnia and hallucinations, broke protocol and began corresponding with a spiritual scholar from New Orleans, Reverend Samuel Tate, who specialized in interdimensional hauntings. Upon reviewing the reports, Reverend Tate said only one thing: "You've opened a birth canal to the other side, and it's not closed." Desperate, Dr. Green and Dr. Chambers organized a late-night inspection of the observation room, the place where Melissa had last been seen. Accompanied by 2 guards, they entered at 2:15 a.m. carrying equipment, thermal scanners, and recorders. What they found shattered their understanding of reality. The room was ice cold, not just chilled, frozen despite no airflow. Their breath fogged. The walls began to tremble subtly, like the heartbeat of something enormous buried beneath the building. Suddenly, the thermal scanner picked up a heat signature, not from any of them, but from inside the concrete wall. Then, from the corner, a voice, not Melissa's, a child's voice. "You let her in. Now we're all in here too." The lights went out. Panic ensued. One of the guards, Officer Myers, screamed. When emergency power kicked in, he was gone. No sign. Just his walkie-talkie and a trail of small wet footprints leading up the wall and disappearing into the ceiling vent. But the most terrifying discovery came moments later. On the far wall, carved deep into the concrete, were dozens of childlike drawings, stick figures, faceless women, black spirals, and in the center, a crude sketch of Melissa, holding hands with shadowy children. Written above them in blood, "Next time, we bring more." Dr. Chambers fell to her knees. Reverend Tate's warning rang louder than ever. This was not a haunting. It was a migration. Ridgewood Penitentiary was no longer a correctional facility. It had become a living gateway to something not of this world. After the events in the observation room, the federal government acted swiftly. Under the guise of a hazardous gas leak, all inmates and remaining staff were evacuated. The prison was sealed, its records classified, and Ridgewood was erased from official databases. But the influence had already begun to spread. Dr. Evelyn Chambers, haunted by the memories of the drawings, took a leave of absence and moved in with her sister in Ohio. But sleep became impossible. At exactly 2:44 a.m., she'd wake in terror to the sound of tiny footsteps on the wooden floor and laughter from behind her closet door. One morning, she found her bathroom mirror fogged up, with a message written in a child's hand. We never left her. She wasn't alone. Dozens of former Ridgewood staff began reporting hallucinations, missing time, and bizarre injuries, like scratch marks in the shape of tiny hands. 3 died under mysterious circumstances. One, Reverend Tate, was found drowned in his own baptismal pool, eyes wide open, a smile carved into his cheeks. Despite the cover-up, a small team of rogue investigators, including an independent filmmaker named Jordan Ray, broke into Ridgewood at night to document the abandoned prison. They live-streamed on a private encrypted server. The footage was never officially released, but fragments leaked online, shaky camera angles, echoing footsteps, childlike giggles, and a final, chilling moment. A girl in a white dress standing in the dark hallway. The camera zoomed in slowly. She smiled. The screen cut to black. That was the last anyone saw of Jordan Ray. Weeks later, a new horror emerged. In a nearby mental health facility where several former inmates of Ridgewood had been relocated, a child was born to a woman named Carla Monroe, who had been sterile since age 19. The baby was born at 2:44 a.m., with black eyes and no cry. It simply stared. The nurses attending the birth later reported a cold draft filling the room, despite no open windows. And each of them heard the same whispered word in their ears: return. The baby disappeared from its crib that very night. Security footage? Blacked out. Carla Monroe was found catatonic, her hand resting over her stomach, whispering Melissa's name again and again. By now, the Centers for Disease Control had declared the area around Ridgewood a high-security quarantine zone. Yet odd electromagnetic disturbances, camera blackouts, and unexplained disappearances continued within a 50-mile radius. Paranormal experts began calling it the Ridgewood effect. Dr. Evelyn Chambers, unable to bear the torment, returned to the one place she feared most, the ruins of Elder's Grove. The village was gone, swallowed by nature, but the church where Melissa had once been found still stood. Inside, she discovered a rotting wooden box beneath the altar, filled with dozens of drawings. Every single one showed the same figure: a woman with no eyes, a wide smile, and children surrounding her. On the back of the final drawing, a message in childlike handwriting: "We came through her. Next time, we come through you." That night, Dr. Chambers vanished. Only her journal remained, its final entry smeared but still readable. Melissa wasn't possessed. She was chosen. And now, so am I. You don't escape the hollow. You only delay the next opening. Today, the land where Ridgewood once stood is surrounded by 10-foot fences topped with razor wire and motion sensors. No official signage, no public record, but if you walk near it at night, if you listen closely around 2:44 a.m., you might hear a child laugh, or a voice whisper your name, or see a little girl in white just standing there, smiling. And if you do, don't stop, don't speak, don't look into her eyes, because the hollow is always waiting, and it only needs one crack to come through again.